Time for the exchange now. Joining me is economist Jed Kolko. He served as Undersecretary for Economic Affairs at the U.S. Commerce Department during the Biden administration. He is now a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. Given you served in the Biden administration, I feel like, do you want to have a rebuttal to what the president just accused the Biden administration of?
I think it is very, very difficult for anyone in any administration to rig or fake our economic statistics. Almost everyone who touches the economic statistics are nonpartisan, non-political, technical experts. There are lots of quality controls. They follow established procedures. And the political appointees who might sit in the leadership positions or oversee these agencies don't see the numbers till the last minute. There's not a way they could manipulate them, and certainly not with lots of people knowing and blowing the whistle.
And that is an important point as we continue to try and parse exactly what went on here and what's going to happen with these statistics in the future. How was this firing? How has it upended the reliance, the veracity, the trustworthiness of data that you say obviously is so important to get right?
So it's unprecedented for a president to fire a termed head of a statistical agency. And that's why this was so surprising, particularly with the accusations without evidence that the numbers were faked or rigged. And so the concern is, are we going to start to see attempts to meddle with or manipulate or undermine federal statistics? Now, there's no evidence of that yet throughout this administration and the previous administration and the administrations before that. The US statistical system is the global gold standard. Businesses, households, policymakers, investors, we all rely and trust in these economic statistics. But this firing starts to raise the question, are we going to get to a point where there could be political interference with our economic statistics? And does that mean that that could erode trust in those data?
And I want to get to the point of what happened with the survey itself. There were problems with this data, right? Not that there was political interference, or not that anyone was doing anything wrong, but it seems that COVID in particular upended a lot of the data collection. How would you proceed with reform? Because again, it wasn't that someone was trying to cook up different statistics here. It's that it has taken so much longer to get an accurate picture of what the economic data actually is.
Two big things are happening. The first is that there's been a very long-term decline in the share of people who actually respond to surveys. Both people and businesses are less likely to respond to government surveys when asked. That's been true for years, that decline. It's true globally. It's true across pretty much all the surveys that the government does. But also, in recent months, there have been lots of losses of staff and resources from the statistical agencies. Already there's been significant attrition. And right now, a third of the leadership positions at the Bureau of Labor Statistics are vacant. That makes it very hard to even conduct business as usual, let alone try to invest in some of the modernization that the statistical system needs. There are things we absolutely can do. We can complement the survey data we have with administrative records, including private sector data that don't depend on surveying people and businesses to improve our statistics. Already, the government is doing this, and there's a lot of room to continue doing it, but it takes resources. And the statistical agencies are in a worse position to make those investments and do that modernization than they were 6 months ago.
And you point out, in fact, that gathering some of this information and having an accurate picture might get more and more problematic just because it's going to become more difficult. I don't understand really why tools like AI aren't going to help out here. I hear you on the fact that they need more resources, but let me ask you this. You know, I reported extensively from Venezuela. Any government statistic that was put out from that government in the last 15 years is totally and utterly ignored. I'm not suggesting we're there in the United States, but what is the risk if people begin to really look suspiciously at government data?
We have examples from around the world of what happens when people no longer trust government statistics. People look to alternative sources, though those alternative sources won't paint a complete picture. They're not representative. They're not designed to tell us how the economy is doing. It's a second best way of looking at how the economy is doing. And if we have a less clear sense, if our view gets fuzzy, we make worse decisions. Businesses might hire too slowly or make the wrong investments. The Fed might take longer to make decisions about interest rates if they have less confidence in the data that they're getting about inflation and unemployment. When people don't trust official statistics, it's not good for the government either. Because if people suspect that the government is manipulating or meddling with statistics, they're going to assume that the truth is worse than what the government's telling them. And that makes it really hard for a government to try to make the case that they're helping the economy, even if they are. And so in the end, it's not even in a government's interest to undermine economic statistics. And yet, sometimes around the world, it happens.
Yeah, and we hope that is a lesson that the Trump administration knows well. I will note it is not just the American economy, but so many economies around the world that depend on statistics from the world's largest economy to be absolutely as accurate as they can be. Economist Jed Kolko, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks.